$21 trillion, a quarter of the world's GDP, the value of the wealthiest empire in that world, the Mughals. The living conditions and prosperity of the empire were among the best in the world. Mughal rulers were considered some of the wealthiest figures to ever live. Shah Jahan was the fifth emperor of the mighty and prosperous Mughal Empire in 17th century India. Shah Jahan, which quite literally means king of the world, utilized his wealth in grand projects that were hard to fathom. He sat on the Peacock Throne, a dazzling throne that took 7 years to complete and was covered in precious jewels. The entire project cost more than some of the most famous buildings he commissioned. He owned the famous Koh-i-Noor diamond, which now sits in the crown of the Queen of England, and drank wine from cups made of jade. He ushered in the golden age of Mughal architecture by building iconic structures in India such as the Red Fort, large sections of the Agra Fort, the Jama Masjid, the Wazir Khan Mosque, the Moti Masjid, the Shah Jahan Mosque, and the Shalimar Gardens. And of course, he commissioned the world-famous Taj Mahal, which now, centuries old, is the masterpiece and ultimate representation of India to the world. The Taj is synonymous with India to most foreigners. Shah Jahan rose to power after defeating his brothers and securing the empire against the Portuguese, Persians, and internal rebellion. At age 15, he was engaged to Arjumand Banu Begum, a talented and cultured lady from a Persian noble family. 5 years later, they were married, and after their wedding celebrations, Shah Jahan, quote, finding her in appearance and character elect among all the women of the time, gave her the title Mumtaz Mahal, Persian for the exalted one of the palace. The marriage was a happy one, as he was completely devoted to her. They had 14 children together, including his favorite son and daughter. Mumtaz became her husband's most important confidant and counselor, wielding great power as an empress, including holding the imperial seal and having the ability to review official documents in their final draft. In fact, Shah Jahan saw his other marriages only as political alliances and focused all of his intimacy, deep affection, attention, and favor towards Mumtaz. And she was his devoted companion, always traveling with him, including during military campaigns, even while pregnant. In the royal harem, her section was by far the most decorated and most frequented, covered in pure gold and precious stones with rose water fountains. Each wife of the Mughal emperor was given a regular monthly allowance, and the highest such allowance on record is the 1 million rupees per year given to Mumtaz by Shah Jahan. At her intercession, he forgave enemies or commuted death sentences. In fact, nothing could be done without her consent. She used her power to provide pensions and donations to the daughters of poor scholars, theologians, and pious men, which again reaffirmed her in her husband's eyes. Despite all that his wealth and opulence could buy, she passed away at age 38 on June 7, 1631, while giving birth to their youngest daughter. She died of a postpartum hemorrhage, which caused considerable blood loss after a painful labor of 30 hours. Shah Jahan was inconsolable. After her death, he went into secluded mourning for a year. When he appeared again, his hair had turned white, his back was bent, and his face worn. He required glasses to see after the constant tears and gave up listening to music, wearing jewelry, sumptuous clothes, or perfumes for 2 years. The emperor was heartbroken, and while he did marry again, he was grief-stricken and never the same. Courtiers related his mental state to that of the infamous Qais in the Arabic folktale Layla Majnun, or Layla and the Madman, which would serve later as one of the inspirations for Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. When he came back from his latest military campaign in the Deccan, Shah Jahan started designing his magnum opus, something that would outshine all of his previous work, something that would take 1,000 elephants, 22,000 laborers, and 2 decades to complete. The tomb of his soulmate, the symbol of undying love and marital devotion, the crown of the palace, the Taj Mahal. The emperor was eventually deposed by his third son Aurangzeb, who took over the empire and imprisoned Shah Jahan at Agra Fort on the banks of the river Yamuna, where he was granted with a view of the Taj Mahal for the rest of his life. The main building of the Taj is a large white marble structure that sits on a raised platform and is surrounded by 4 minarets, or tall, thin towers at its corners. The main dome of the building is in the center, and it's surrounded by smaller domes and spires. The dome is topped with a finial, which is a decorative ornament that sits at the very top of the dome. The exterior is covered in intricate carvings and inlaid with precious stones. The walls are decorated with calligraphy, geometric patterns, and floral designs. The building is a symmetrical structure, with the main archway located in the center of the building's facade, that leads to the main chamber where the tombs of Shah Jahan and his wife are located. One of the most striking features of the Taj is its symmetry. It's divided into two main parts, the main tomb and the mosque to its left, which are both mirror images of each other. The main tomb is topped by a double dome, which is surrounded by four smaller domes. The dome itself is made of white marble and topped of gold. The main entrance is located on the south side, and it leads to a large courtyard that is surrounded by a high wall. The courtyard is entered through a large gate, which is decorated with inlaid marble. The gate is topped by a small dome, which is made of gold. The Taj is surrounded by beautiful gardens and fountains, which are designed to reflect the paradise gardens described in Islamic texts. Its intricate details, symmetry, and use of precious materials have named it one of the 7 wonders of the world, and one of the most visited places on Earth. I wanted to share the story behind the Taj because it truly is mythical. And of course it was on my bucket list to go there when I was in India, to marvel at splendor and love, to see the finest spectacle of Indo-Islamic architecture, to explore the mausoleum that cost $1 billion. Expectations were high, and they completely plummeted. I was never more disappointed. You see, the story I relayed to you is a story of bygone years, when India was the land that spurred European explorers to seek unimaginable wealth. Post-colonialism and recovering from centuries of British imperialism, India today is certainly a growing superpower, but also still very much battling with poverty. Nearly 200 million Indians survive on less than 40 cents a day. The top 1% of India owns nearly 3/4 of all of its wealth today. So imagine my surprise when I rode to the Taj on a camel with this immortal story in my mind, and as we get closer to entering it, the entire pathway to the entrance is completely occupied by beggars. And beggars in the most horrific conditions imaginable. Missing limbs, children, severely malnourished, many wasting away in their own excrement. That's the image I remember from this trip. Right outside this wondrous establishment lay the abandoned. From what I remember of the Taj Mahal itself, its beautiful white elegance had been eroded by air pollution, coated in industrial soot, and drenched in acid rain. India is home to some of the most polluted cities on the planet, and Agra, unfortunately, is no exception. I love India. I love its history. I love its startup scene. But there remains much work to do to support the less fortunate in India. If you do travel to India, definitely check out the Taj. And let me know where you do go, because there's so much to do there. If you are interested in helping out the less fortunate in India, there's a potential avenue here. This is the nonprofit Swat Talim Foundation, which is part of the 5th cohort of the iVenture Accelerator, the entrepreneurship program I direct. They create thriving school communities for adolescent, underprivileged girls in rural India, and recently won a grant from Google for their pioneering work. You can help support a girl's education. Check it out at swatalim.org/donate.